Hi, Troy. Thanks everybody for joining. So I wanted to provide a little bit of a level set as we get into our discussion. And the first thing I want to ask is, what happened to shorter, more productive meetings? We've been working on this issue for years, but we've been actually going backwards for years. The average length of a meeting today is longer than it was some years ago. And there are a number of reasons for that, whether it's a lack of a focused agenda, the inadequate user training, or confidence in meetings technology that's maybe difficult to use or too complex, low quality, or really has the inadequate features for the use case. Today, we have an average of 9 participants per meeting, making them expensive. Those salaries and hourly wages, they do add up. So we can't waste time in meetings that are unproductive. The majority of senior managers actually agree that their meetings are inefficient and unproductive. So whether you are in one meeting a day or one a week or all day long, they need to count. Something has to change. Every year, Frost & Sullivan surveys thousands of IT decision makers worldwide about their adoption of communications technology and their future plans to do so. We wrapped up our most recent survey in December 2020, so well into the COVID experience. And we decided to ask, well, what are your offices going to look like? And 70% said that they plan to increase their investments in open office concepts. Now, this isn't the open office of yesterday, where it's just one big, long open auditorium. More so, it's going to be a series of flexible modular spaces with creative partitioning that allows different teams and work groups to work together or for individuals to work together. And really, the intent for that is to support project life cycles over each phase of the project, where you might have your team grow and then shrink according to where you are in that life cycle. In addition, we learned that almost 70% plan to either maintain or increase the number of large and mid-size conference rooms, and about 60% said they plan to increase the number of small meeting spaces, such as huddle rooms, pods, jump booths, phone booths. So overall, change is evident. Now, all of this actually aims to accommodate the anticipated higher levels of remote and hybrid work compared to pre-pandemic levels. Troy?
Waiting on my slide.
Yep. It's previous. Yep.
So that's a hybrid remote model. More elements of the business will require high quality solutions that enable teams to keep in contact wherever they're located. It's about ensuring people have the environment and technology to communicate safely and effectively across business with a trend to retrofit. And minimal touch, things like occupancy sensors, gesture-based control systems will be essential to providing a comfortable, safe working environment once people return to the office.
Yeah, I think we agree with that there's going to be some behavioral changes that we need to account for as well.
Without doubt.
Yeah. What we've seen, and I think most of us can agree, we have indeed entered a new era of work. The increase in flex work, staggered and rotated shifts, remote work or working from home make it more important than ever for people to be able to connect. And we saw in 2020 the unprecedented adoption and use of cloud meetings, applications, and services to make those connections. So services such as Microsoft Teams or Zoom meetings, for example. Our research showed an almost 3-fold increase in the number of paid user subscriptions last year compared to 2019. That number exceeded 200 million paying seats, which is very incredible. Robust growth we expect, we went back and reforecast based on the pandemic and this high usage, very, very strong compound annual growth rate of almost 45% in additional seats being adopted by enterprise users over the next 5 years. In general, people expect, if we could go back. In general, our IT decision makers are expecting these benefits that are on the right side of the slide. Overall, there's many of them and they're diverse, but I think it's safe to say in summary that people are expecting more from their technology investments.
Yeah, definitely things have changed. The dependence upon video conferencing has skyrocketed. And just the fact that we now use the words remote worker means we have a much more decentralized method of communication. Certainly some are comfortable returning to the workplace, others will not be comfortable returning to the workplace. So we're going to be looking at a blended environment, and the spaces that we're going to be looking to design will reflect that. Rooms that previously held 20 people may only hold 10, for example. The good news is that the bones of the technology, what we put in these spaces, microphones, displays, DSP loudspeakers, are going to remain the same. What is new, however, is the realization that the right AV solution can effectively be a business savior. Through the pandemic, I've seen the renovation of a lot of spaces, and all with an eye towards improvement of the performance, particularly the audio performance, and the building of new rooms to a higher technical standard. And this, focus on a higher technical standard or higher level of audio performance is equally important in the office as it is for the remote associate. There's no doubt that this is permanent change. So, how ready are people to return to the workplace? For the most part, the answer is they are. However, there is a fair amount of disparity among the workforce as to how much time they want to spend in the office. So only 12% want to stay home, right? They've got a taste of it during the pandemic and they never want to go back to the office, while the remaining 88% definitely want some blended time between working from home and working in the office. If we break that down a little bit more, apparently 44% have reached the end of their rope with their family members and want to go back to work full time. The remaining people want some blended, either the 12% who want to work 5 days a week at home, or the other 44% who want somewhere between 1 to 4 days at home. So we're definitely looking at a blended, group of people working both remotely and returning to the workplace.
That's understandable. I've been working from home for 18 years now, and people really understand my pain now. And I have a lot more conversations in my personal life about what technology are you using? And I'm astounded at how many people are just limping along with their embedded peripherals in their laptops.
And it's not just the office, right? Educational. I just heard in the last couple of weeks that the New York City school system has decided no more snow days, right? So they've gone through the pain, and if it wasn't for the pandemic, they wouldn't have reached this conclusion, right? But now, because they've pivoted and they know how to use the technology, they've come to the point where they just said no more snow days. So this means that the school year won't extend further into the summer, which I guess is a good thing.
Yeah,
so
process continuity. Yeah.
So why do they want to go back to the office? Well, these are the top 9. We couldn't afford top 10. Number one, there are 2 here that are particularly interesting. Scheduled meetings with colleagues. They miss their work family. They want FaceTime amongst their coworkers in a more traditional meeting environment. I speak for myself, and I think a lot of people, when it's just more comforting to look people in the face and be in the same room with people when you're doing a presentation. Right? It's a little bit harder to do that. The remote meetings don't have the same impact as those that are done in person. The second one here is the access to technology. Remote workers acknowledge that what they have at home in their remote environment doesn't match what they're used to using in the workplace. The fact that it's even listed on this top 9 list indicates that workers are looking for a better method to communicate with their colleagues, particularly when they're working remote.
Right, and our survey actually backs that. In the office, IT decision makers are looking to update, upgrade, replace, or fully install as new solutions that help their people to communicate better when they're in the room, but also communicate better with those that can't make it to the office that day or work across the country, et cetera. The experiences that we've all had over the past 15 months has made it very clear to most people that good enough is just simply not good enough. It needs to be business quality to instill that confidence in your colleagues, your prospects, your customers, your partners, that you're there and present, you have a professional image, right? And overall, the technology needs to offer appropriate security, ease of use, reliability, and a feature set to support the use cases that they're intended for, and then just get out of the way and let people concentrate on their communications and their content. That's all it needs to do.
Yeah, and to that point, there was definitely a little bit of a paradigm shift, particularly for the remote worker from, pre-pandemic, what was good enough for social calls like calling grandma on her birthday, to a more formal method of communication when working remotely, both with your coworkers and customers, right? And there were some technical challenges there in the beginning, right? We heard the dog barking and, who drank all the milk and all of those background noises. Slowly, people figured out, get out of the kitchen. That's the crossroads of the house, right? Try to find a more private space. But when we were doing it as a social thing prior to the pandemic, we were accepting that level of quality was okay, right? It's now we need a little bit better solution. So, and to that mind, many employers have provided a budget for remote associates so that they can upgrade the systems that they have at home with the appropriate technology to improve their experience. Obviously, simple things like a dedicated microphone, better audio monitoring should be considered for the remote associate, and some people have provided funds for their remote associates to do that. And that gap between what was good enough for home usage prior to the pandemic and what's required for communicating on a more professional level now is closing.
Yeah. So these are some of our stats on our expectations for the remote workforce globally. In terms of, this is primarily white collar workers or knowledge workers. About half of people are working remotely today. 30% will be working remotely going forward, as opposed to just 5% like myself prior to the pandemic. It's slightly lower for the contact center agents because they have slightly different requirements, but we do expect that to be a much, much higher population of people. But the important thing here is we talk about video conferencing a lot because it's hot, right? And it's cool to do. And it's, it does have a lot of value. As you mentioned, Troy, you can see people's eyes, you can build trust, you can read their body gestures, and things like that. But video conferencing is not the sole panacea for enterprise communications needs. In fact, we often do video just for the sake of it at this point. And sometimes it's not even really adding value, such as if I meet with my manager who I talk to all day long, I don't know, video doesn't really add much to that conversation because we know each other so well. Many users are also tired of getting ready for video, making sure everything is, the lighting is right and things like this. We've heard of fatigue from a lot of users, more so in the last few months than we did when video was so novel in the pandemic. What we've really come to hone in on is that what matters most is audio. If you don't have high quality audio, it's very difficult to discuss complex business information and concepts. It needs to be articulated and interpreted correctly, or else you're going to have problems and you're going to drive inefficiencies into your processes. So audio is king. honestly, without audio, you don't have a meeting. There are very, very few specialized use cases where that's not the case. What we found is a lot of times our meeting over, say, Zoom, they're not turning on audio. They're just having a point-to-point call, a real quick and easy desktop call where they can discuss things with each other. It's the most frequently used modality of communication in meetings, whether you're face-to-face or whether you're on video or whether you're just on audio. And that means that it is paramount that every participant is part of the conversation fully, no matter where they're joining from.
Yeah, there are definitely limitations with working remotely, certainly bandwidth, service reliability, just something as simple, when can you expect to talk to people? You know, in the office, we can perform office or cubicle drive-bys to see if somebody's in. At home, we've got to look for either the green or the red circle, right? Are they in? Are they out? Maybe I'll try to chat with them anyhow. But you know, when we're working at home, we may or may not be able to contact our colleagues as easily. Improvements to the equipment you use at home, you know, as I mentioned previously, should be considered. And I mentioned previously also that, you know, people have provided, employers have provided budget for that. So, you know, definitely some implications between the time in the office versus remote. And obviously some of the statistics I mentioned earlier indicate that people at least recognize that there are some shortcomings working from home as opposed to returning to the office and communicating their ideas more effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So we've all been in meetings or on calls when there are audio issues, maybe volume is low or someone has a poor connection and it's staticky and jittery. There's also been rounds and rounds of YouTube clips, right? Showing these comical issues that happen in business meetings when people are dialing in from remote or two rooms are trying to join together. And it's really funny, but at the same time, it's a bit of a nervous laugh because that happens and nobody wants it to happen. It's relatable. But if one person has poor audio on the call, it's most likely disrupting just about everyone because that person can't communicate or that person is disrupting everybody else. So mitigating that disruption and making sure audio is a productivity enabler really helps to mitigate a lot of the issues and deliver on some of these benefits that we see here.
So prior to the pandemic, Shure commissioned a survey about video conferencing experience by corporate end users. The participants were unaware that it was actually an audio company soliciting the response. But what was interesting was that out of the top 5 frustrations, 4 of them were audio related. So they include background noise, difficulty connecting, echo, audio cutting out, difficulty hearing each person. So 1, 3, 4, and 5 obviously being audio related. And these issues plague both the office and the remote worker equally, as we'll see in an upcoming slide. Next slide. So here we are during the pandemic, and Remote Associates produced yet another list of issues that they felt hindered their ability to be productive. And what rears its ugly head is number 1 again, background noise. Again, the dog barking, we ran out of milk, people walking through the kitchen. Definitely something that we're looking at to help alleviate. There are solutions, you know, again, a better microphone, get closer to the microphone, find someplace more quiet than the kitchen, right? Which is probably the easiest thing to do. But another item of note here, the 5th item on this is tools and equipment. Again, we see the recognition that while at the office, you're better equipped to complete a level of communication than you are working remotely. So definitely, background noise is something that we're looking at and hoping to provide some solutions for in the future.
You sound good, Troy. I wear these all the time, and some
Right.
people might find it odd working from home wearing these when I'm the only one in the house, but I don't hear the dog right next door that's incessantly barking. I don't hear
Right.
the lawnmowers, the leaf blowers, any of that stuff. I
Right.
don't have to wear them all day, but I can.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's a broadcast level microphone plugged into one of our motive devices. And I'm playing it back through a speaker in the room. So in some cases, I like to walk around a little bit when I'm
Yeah,
just in a listen mode, right?
yeah, that's a good point too.
Yep. So after all the data was collected in our survey, it definitely identified audio as being 4 times more important to meeting attendees than the video. Now, the interesting thing in this same survey, when asked where do they plan on spending their budget dollars, the answer was universally video, displays specifically, right? Everybody wants to spend money on that beautiful shrine at the front of the room.
Right.
But, as you mentioned, audio is critical to effective conferencing. Intelligibility is key. You can always continue a conversation if you lose the video, but once you lose the audio, all you have is what I like to refer to as fancy surveillance, right? So this statistic is equally important working at the office as it is working remotely.
It's a good stat. So we're circling back to something that you alluded to earlier, Troy, and we're hearing more and more about this, even though we know more about, the current disease that's going around, the virus, and how it's transmitted. There's behavioral changes that need to be dealt with. And part of the way that can be dealt with is through intelligent technology that takes the propensity for human error out of the equation. So you can maintain better audio, as well as higher safety levels and also investment protection, really. If you have intelligent audio that doesn't require users to adjust the angle of the microphone, adjust the speaker so that everyone in the room can hear, to do things like manage if you're IT, or provision a software update, for example. What we really don't want people to do is physically touch the equipment in the room. As I said earlier, it just needs to work and give the confidence that it's going to be there doing its job in the background. This removes not only the issue of end users touching the equipment in the meeting spaces, which I don't know any facilities people or IT people that want end users messing with the gear. Too many things can happen. And not requiring them to do that reduces the burden on IT, because also, I don't know facilities or IT, they want their staff to have to frequently go to every room and manually readjust things to the way that they should be for optimized audio. So there's a number of factors that play into the benefits of investing in better audio equipment. And IT time is one of the most quantifiable elements of an ROI calculation that you can get. They spend less time with it, you reap your ROI much faster.
So what can we expect moving forward? Certainly social distancing is a requirement moving forward. How long is that going to last? I don't know. In some respect, we didn't really, up until March of 2020, we didn't really hold true to any of the lessons that we learned 100 years ago during the Spanish flu. So how much time it's going to take before social distancing is not an issue anymore, I don't know. My guess is that we're going to need to be concerned about this for at least the next 12 months.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is maybe it's going to become more stringent. Similar to fire codes that mandate maximum occupancy for a given space, might we see health requirements that provide similar occupancy limits?
And Troy, it's different in different cities and different parts of the country. So you
Yeah.
have to factor that in too. It has to be manageable.
Yeah. And then certainly what you were just alluding to, a secure, clean workplace is mandatory, right? So again, the touchless devices everybody's interested in. Again, occupancy centers, face detection, gesture-based control. Nobody wants to go in and have to clean these devices, that people may be touching. And they certainly don't want the liability of people getting sick from having to touch these devices. So there's definitely some concerns there.
Yes.
How we use the office space, well, it's definitely going to change. And I think this is the question that a lot of end users have. And I think there's a little bit of hesitancy on, you mentioned the flexible workspace. Well, what kind of flexible workspace, right? I've seen recently companies like Google experiment with different office concepts, right? That are reconfigurable in just a matter of hours. Inflatable partitions, these, bookshelf looking building block partitions. I even saw them, Google create some sort of campground outdoor space for meetings, right? Almost glamping, right? So these are interesting alternatives that, companies are experimenting with. And, they probably have to attract some of those people who want to stay home to come back to a more friendly workplace, right?
And they can change it. They can change it when the protocols change without a lot of remediation.
Yep. And so then the important thing there is that the technology that you're going to put into those spaces needs to be flexible as well, right? And, fortunately, we have some solutions for that. There's definitely a need for a more friendly work environment so that we can get people back to the workplace. Next slide. And here we go. So here's an example of a conference space using the Microflex ecosystem from Shure. It includes a pair of MXA 910 ceiling array microphones. Also our MXN5WC product, our Intellimix Room, which is our software DSP. The MXN5WC is our networked ceiling loudspeaker. And then we also have our MXA network mute button. All of these products are connected to a switch via category cable. And you would use Shure Designer software and or Dante controller to configure and connect everything together. The good thing here is we were talking about these environments being flexible and the technology needing to be flexible. This is a very simple installation, almost only a single type of cable required, and it gives you the ability to dial in very high performance and also reconfigure it relatively quickly if you need to. Category cable is very commonplace in the office these days. So all of these endpoints are just connected via category cable back to the switch, and then software, Shure Designer or Dante controller to configure everything. And with that, I'm going to throw it back to Cheryl.
Awesome. Lots of great information and data, gentlemen. Thank you so much. But now we want to know what you all think. So we're going to take a couple of quick little polls. I'm going to launch the first one here. So we'd like to know, what's the most important technology that is in the office that you do not have at home? Would that be the audio, superior video, better internet, good control, or the all-important espresso machine? So please.
You laugh at the espresso machine, but I have been in some corporate facilities where I can't take 10 steps without some sort of juice bar or granola snack bar kind of thing. So I have to imagine for those lucky enough to work in that environment that they are missing that to some extent.
I think I miss the food court at our office the most, but my wallet doesn't.
Yeah, COVID has not been kind to a lot of us in the food category.
Fantastic. All right. Votes are rolling in, everybody. Looks like we have a couple of clear winners, but nobody's pulling ahead too far.
I don't know. Troy might have swayed that one. The espresso machine.
Well, there's only so much espresso you can take, or at least I can take.
True.
And I don't know how many people actually bought an espresso machine after, so much time at home. I know I certainly updated my work from home situation. All right. I think we've got enough answers here. It was pretty even, so I'm going to close the poll and we can see what this crew was thinking. So it looks like control technology actually won out a little bit with audio just after it there.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, well, that is definitely the missing component. Certainly systems monitoring, things like that. You know, uh, I mean,
It can
control
easily be
technology.
overlooked.
Well, and control technology in the workplace is much more important than, in my opinion, than the remote, right? But it does so much for you. It gives you the ability to, again, create a more professional presentation, right? A better product.
Yes.
It's good to see that the audio is almost a third of it. So, which again, in my opinion, is the most important part there.
I will
And I
agree.
think we've got a second question, I think,
We
right,
do.
Cheryl?
Yep. All right. So I'm going to launch this next one here. Here we go. All right. So, how willing is your company to invest to make meetings more productive, both remote and in office? Are they very likely, somewhat likely, not likely? Don't know, or it's not even an option. Please take a moment and let us know your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that there were companies that provided budget to their work from home associates. I don't know how many were doing that. Obviously, some of the bigger names were making that available to their associates. But I did provide a lot of input on a lot of office upgrades, right? I think the medium-sized conference room is the winner. The huddle space, maybe not the winner. I mean, there's not too many people who want to get crammed into an oversized closet these days, right? Social distancing is a concern. And the fact of the matter is that, pre-pandemic, maybe you had 4 people that would shuffle on into the huddle room, but now of those 4 people, maybe only 2 are in the office. The other 2 are remote. So, here we are back to that hybrid model, if you will.
Right. And we've been
So,
seeing a lot of proof of concept and assessments, which means that companies are ready to move forward. So if a company's not at least in that phase now, it needs to happen soon.
yeah. And as I mentioned, during the pandemic, they were upgrading, right? Particularly the audio in many of these spaces. The middle to large conference space is a safe room to build, right? Because you
Sure.
can do social distancing. You could have 2 or 4 people in a larger room. I believe gone are the days where you saw a 20-seat conference space with gallery seating on the left and right of the room, cramming 40 or 50 people in a room. I have to believe that those days are gone, right? Only the key people will be in the room, and the rest most likely will be remote, even if they're in office. So,
Definitely. All right. Looks like we've got a good response right here. So I'll close this and share the results. So it looks like very likely and somewhat likely. So lots of
yeah,
investment coming, I'm sure.
Some lucky people.
yeah, good, good.
All righty. So with that, I'm going to hide those results. And now we're going to work on some questions. So let's start with the first question I've got here. Our budget won't cover a full-blown video conferencing system in all of our meeting rooms. What do you suggest?
Well, Robert alluded to this earlier that interestingly enough, despite the fact that when surveyed, people want to spend their money on display, the video component is not the most important, right? The content and the audio are the 2 key components for communicating. So, at least if you're remote, a good microphone. If you're working from the office, a better setup so that the audio quality is of good quality. And the content, those you can get away without the video. Again, without the audio, it's fancy surveillance. So with audio, with content, you're a good portion of the way there. Everybody would prefer to see who's on the other end of the line, but it's not necessary to get your message across.
All right.
Agree, Robert?
Yes, actually, we did some research on content sharing, and a lot of rooms, what we found was they're not, some of these rooms aren't even on the roadmap to be video enabled because it's not necessary, or there's other rooms that will have video. So for those calls where it's all about the content and the audio, there's just going to be a content sharing device and some good audio gear in there. And that's what they need in these, and it's typically smaller spaces, but we're also seeing that in some larger spaces as well.
Great. All right, next question. How is increased airflow based on new safety requirements affecting the audio conference rooms? And what solutions can you suggest?
That's a good one.
Airflow.
So
Are they
HVAC,
HVAC is what I was gonna,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's what their question is.
Yeah.
good question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have statistics on what the requirements are. I mean, other than the HEPA filter, and better air filtration. I know a lot of companies have implemented. Your feet per minute into and out of a room are calculated on your heat loads typically for HVAC. I haven't seen anything. ASHRAE is one of the governing bodies for HVAC design, and I haven't seen much COVID-related data from them. But the HEPA
about-
filtration has been certainly something that people have been discussing.
How about, I mean, I think what people are also doing is trying to design their HVAC so that the air blows in a certain way or a certain direction. So it doesn't blow one person's exhale across another person, for example. But then that could cause some audio issues. What would you suggest there?
Well, I mean, so now it's a blending of typically the people who are involved with the technology that goes into the spaces are not the same people who are involved with the HVAC system, right? And, typically the biggest headache with HVAC systems have been noise, right? And raising the NC level within a space. So as soon as we start changing the grills, we have a potential problem where we're changing the noise floor in the room as well. Now, certainly if you have the right technology, we have things like noise reduction built into some of the DSP that can alleviate some of that. But every time you rely a little bit more on the DSP, it affects the quality and the tonal quality character of the voice. So yes, you can change grills, right? The grills that are on the supply side of the HVAC system can move air a little bit differently through the space. Is the grill you're putting up more restrictive, creating more noise? Which might mean you need to tweak the tech system a little bit. I think the biggest concern there with respect to airflow is going to be filtration of the air, right?
Mhm.
And these are not cheap things. I mean, it's much easier and probably cheaper in many respects to change the technology than it is to go in and open up the ceiling and start changing the HVAC system, right? That's major surgery for a lot of people. But it's certainly something that people are going to be looking at with new construction, right? And certainly if there are any code changes or regulations regarding clean air within an office environment, people are going to have to make those changes. So it's an interesting question. I guess I don't have a straight answer for you right now, but it definitely can complicate things a little bit.
We've also seen a little bit more of a cross-pollination of the stakeholders that need to work more closely together. So facilities with IT, even with HR and physical security for enforcement or just raising the concerns in their particular fields so that they can come up with a common solution.
Yeah, unfortunately, AV and acoustics always seems to be the last concern when you're designing a conference room, when it needs to be moved a little bit further up the list. Yeah.
Agreed.
There was a comment that came in related to this as an acoustician, oh goodness, I'm butchering that word, just different design of HVAC systems. So more air exchanges per time unit really requires larger ducts to dump more air at a slower speed to keep turbulence or noise down.
Yep.
So-
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? It's not so easy to, we can't inflate the ductwork. We have to rip the ceiling down and maybe even the walls down and put that larger duct in. That's where the major surgery comes into place. So it's definitely a challenge.
When it comes to Troy, some of our like Shure MXA solutions, with something like an MXA 310, the table mic with a toroid pattern, would that sort of help cut down on sort of that potential noise?
It could show. That's a good point. I mean, there are things, or even, the MXA 910 that's a steerable array, right? I mean, but to Robert's point, if the grill that was installed previously was not a problem, and now the new grill is producing noise, it could introduce a new problem into a room that previously didn't have one, right?
Right.
And there could be a technical or technological solution to that issue. But certainly something like the MXA 310, which is more of a donut, or if you're from New York, a bagel shape, right? Where there's a null, 90 degrees to the device, which could effectively eliminate some of that noise coming out of a grill, a diffuser mounted in the ceiling.
Great.
Hmm.
All right, I've got another one here. With the restyling of many offices to have open seating plans with low or no partitions or dividers, and the possible trend to reduce the number of huddle rooms, where are we supposed to go to have a call without annoying those around us? Bring back the phone booth.
Well, the huddle room might be, people call them phone booths or teleportation rooms, where it's a one-person room, right?
Yep.
I just don't see the huddle room as what we were looking at it before. Again, being acceptable from a social distancing standpoint, and two, with I don't know who's going to be off. Prior to the pandemic, it was all hands on deck. You could expect a certain percentage of the people to be in the office every day. Moving forward, I don't know that we're going to have that luxury. So, are those people that you think that prior you would have gone in the huddle room? That's why I think that medium to large room is key. That's your most flexible space, because it could be 2 or 4 people, it could be 6 people, it could be 8 people, right? It gives you the opportunity for social distancing, and the technology is relatively the same, right? We need mics, we need microphone, we need cameras, we need displays, loudspeakers. So as long as the rooms have that technology in them, and the medium-sized room gives the ability to spread out a little bit, I think that's really the safest bet. The huddle room is a little bit of a challenge, or at least a question mark moving forward.
Yeah. No,
So
desktop collaboration. So personal collaboration. There's a lot of thought that should be given around that. So with virtual backgrounds, you don't have all that distraction of people walking around behind you, or they're not concerned about their privacy because they're masks. But then you have things, such as a good headset that filters out all those other people. You don't have to speak as loudly. It's ergonomic, so it's not really a problem to turn in your seat and have a call where you're speaking into your cube or into your desk, rather than straight at someone that's across from you. So there's ways to go about it, and there's a little bit of user training and education involved on how to project your voice. Not that I'm great at that myself, but how to project your voice and how to use your equipment so that you can get the most out of it while blocking all that unnecessary ambient noise out.
Great. Believe it or not, there's a question for me. What mic is Cheryl using? That is a good question. And I'm kind of an outlier because I'm actually a professional singer on the side as my side hustle. So I have a really nice selection of professional vocal mics at my disposal since I work for Shure. And this is actually a professional condenser microphone, vocal condenser microphone called the KSM-9. It's actually the HS version, which stands for a hypercardioid, subcardioid option. So yeah, it was just for me an easy switch, and I've got it plugged into a Motive MVI single channel interface directly into my computer. But there are lots of other great microphone solutions. We have a full line of products called Motive that are USB plug and play options. So if you're looking to up your mic gain, there's a lot more affordable options out there that will still give you great audio. The MV5C comes to mind, specifically designed for home conferencing in mind. That'll be a little bit more bang for your buck than, a full-on professional condenser microphone. So
I'll also put a plug in for the new Motive MV7, which is a USB version of our SM7B microphone.
That's what I'm using. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Yep.
great mic. I've actually been wanting to
Yeah.
get one, but you know,
I know someone who can hook you up, Cheryl. So,
we'll talk.
all right.
All right. Next question here. It's actually a comment. Having global teams with people who often have strong accents makes audio quality even more important to intelligibility. I will agree with that.
Yes. Yeah,
Absolutely
100%.
true. Yep.
Especially because global calls sometimes have to happen at odd times, like when you've just woken up. So you're
Or ready to go to sleep. Yeah.
having to pay
Absolutely.
even
Yeah.
more attention. All
Yeah.
right. Speaking of that work from home situation, how do our home based workers achieve high quality audio without wearing headsets all day?
Well, we just mentioned some of that, right? Some of the Motive products where you can, at least on the transmit side, you can plug in a higher quality microphone. That's certainly a good part of it. The second part of it would be to look at, an external loudspeaker, right? There are ways you can do that. There's actually on the MVI that you just mentioned, there's a headset out that you could use a breakout cable to a self-powered loudspeaker. In fact, that's what I use here so that I can get up and walk around. I'm not tethered to a pair of headphones all day long. Because there are days where I'm 7, 8, or even more hours on video conference.
Yeah.
It starts to get a little bit tiring. If you're on for 1 or 2 hours, you get a break. You're on for another 1 or 2 hours. The headphones, certainly our headphones, the Aonics that Robert's wearing, are very comfortable. But even still, it's a little disconcerting to have them on for 8 hours or more a day. So at least it gives me, at least when I'm on a one-sided and I'm not presenting video conference, I have the loudspeaker where I can walk around a little bit and get some other stuff done in the office or my home office.
Yeah. Work style and preference are a big part of that. It's not just about the performance, but it's how do you want to use it? I do pace when I'm not on video. I'm listening to a webinar, webcast, or what have you. I do pace, and it's nice not to be tethered, whether it's a headset or a standalone speaker. Yeah.
I'll also put in a plug for another division of our company, STEM. STEM has some products that have both the mic and the speaker built into them that are connected via USB.
Fantastic. All right, gents. I think that wraps up all of the questions. Any sort of wrap up comments you'd like to make?
Invest in a good microphone or a good pair of headphones. That gets you a good portion there. Find a quiet part of the house. If you're working remotely, get out of the kitchen.
That's good. I would say think about flexibility. Don't lock yourself into one solution for what you might use for a short period of time. Look for things that you can add on to, or you can change around as your needs evolve.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for all the great information. We hope you all joining us today learned a little something. I know I certainly did. And we hope to see you next time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.